off that same triangle we just did a whole bunch of distance formula stuff with. But in this case, we're going to focus on median. Okay, so we got some info here. We had coordinates A, which was at 3 and 2, B, which was at 3 and -3, and C, which was at 4 and 3. And when we quickly sketched it out, okay, it did something like this. 1, 2, 3. I can't see those lines. I'm going to have to move over a bit. Here we go. So 1, 2, 3. 1, 2 is I think that's about there. Point A, 1, about there, and 1, 2, 3 about there. Okay. Is there B and our C? Okay, and we collected it. Now, we got our isosceles triangle. It's a bit of a different scale here, but technically we learned that this is isosceles. I need to find the median. And the median is taken by taking the midpoint. So I want median of A. I'm going to say median of vertex A. So median of A. All that means is I'm going from this point here, and I got to go to the opposite side of the triangle, which would actually be our side BC. And I want to go to the middle of that opposite side. So I got to find the middle here. And I have to draw a line. I need to draw a line from A to the middle there. And not only do I have to draw that line, but I actually have to find the equation of the line, because the median is asking for, the median is asking for the equation of a line. Okay, and we know the equation of a line is technically y equals mx plus b. This is like the parent function. We got to figure out the slope and the y-intercept in the process. Well, to find the equation of a line, knowing the coordinates of 2 points is really important. If we have 2 points, we can find coordinates. In fact, I could tell you the equation of AC, BC, and AB, all the sides of that triangle. I could find those because I have all those coordinates. We have them all up here. Nice and handy. I don't have this midpoint. So I'm going to have to use a midpoint formula between B and C to solve it. Now, you said this is something you're pretty strong with. So it might be written like this. Midpoint of BC is equal to x1 plus x2 over 2, comma, y1 plus y2 over 2, closing bracket. I'm going to use BC, so that's important here. I'm going to just write those out. And it doesn't matter which is coordinate 1 and coordinate 2. When we do that, that becomes x1, y1, x2, y2. And we just plug them in. So the midpoint of BC is equal to x1, which happens to be 3, plus 4 over 2, and -3 plus 3. Is that right? Yeah, over 2. Our midpoint here is going to be 7 over 2 and 0. So one's a real easy number to work with. The other one is a fraction, a bit tricky. We could technically say it's 3.5 or 3.5 if that's easier for you. You could say 3.5 and 0. Say or. Either of those will work. So now we have a coordinate. This coordinate here is 3.5 and 0, and coordinate A is 3, 2. So now we've got to find the equation of a line. Well, the equation of a line, when you have 2 points, the first thing you're going to solve for is slope. So we need to find the slope between these two coordinates. And to find slope, m is equal to the change in y over the change in x, which is known as the rise over the run, which has a really specific formula too that says like y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Lots of labeling things 1 and 2. They literally like to do that here. Again, doesn't matter which one's coordinate 1. I'll call that coordinate 1, this coordinate 2. Makes this x1, y1, and this one's x2, y2. We just plug in. That's why we label all these things, so it's a lot easier to plug in. y2 happens to be 0. Y1 happens to be 2. x2 happens to be 3.5. And x1 happens to be 3. Make a mistake there, 3.5. Oh, and 0, there you go. Oh, that should say -3. Ooh. Knew something was off with this visual. That should say -3. Luckily, up at this point, we haven't used anything. Have we used an A yet? No, we haven't. Good. So 3.5 subtract -3. Let me put that in there because that's going to change things. When we go to solve it, we'll get -2 on top. And on the bottom, we're going to get -6.5. Okay? Those two negatives end up being just a positive, so it's 2 over 6.5. This is something you might want to round. Another way to do this is technically 4 over 13. I multiplied both the top and the bottom by 2 to make it whole numbers. I'm going to leave it like that because slope is really nice as a fraction. It's easy to see rise and run when you leave it as a fraction. So when we do that, we're going to start plugging it into our equation of a line. Y is equal to m, x plus b, and it just so happens what we found was m. So y equals 4 over 13 x plus b. The only thing I need is b. Now, in order to find b, I need coordinates along this line. And it just so happens I have coordinates. Coordinate a and coordinate m, which is the midpoint of BC. This one has a bit of a fraction to it. So at first glance, or a decimal I should say, I'm not going to use it. I'm going to use this one, -3 and 2. I'm going to plug this in for x and this value in for y, and that will help us solve for our y-intercept. So coordinate A, I'm going to use it again because it is on the line, which is -3 and 2, which is coordinate A. I'm going to plug that in for x and that in for y. So x and y will replace. Y will be 2 is equal to 4 over 13 times the x value, which is -3, plus b. When we do that, the whole goal here is just to isolate for b, so we just carry out some algebra. 2 is equal to -3 times this becomes -12 over 13 plus b. I'm going to move this to the other side, becomes 2 minus 12 over 13 is equal to b. You could use a calculator. It'll get you some decimal value. I'll quickly use a fraction just because it's easier than for me right now than bringing out my calculator. This is going to be 26 over 13 minus 12 over 13 is equal to b. B will be equal to 14 over 13. So 1 point, some really low number. But what's important here is our equation we have. Y is equal to 4 over 13x plus 14 over 13 for our b value. So some number just a little above 1. If we take a look at that, the y-intercept, yeah, that kind of makes sense. That's probably some number just above 1 here. So let's zoom out. Take a look. There's quite a bit of what we had to do to find the median of a line.